Yo, WWE Maniacs. Welcome to Night Before Wrestle, the place where wrestling never sleeps. Subscribe, ring that bell, and let's get into today's action. 2 minutes. Sometimes that's all it takes for a locker room to change forever. The building was settling after showtime, the buzz fading to a low thrum of road cases and chatter, when Seth Rollins stepped through a backstage doorway with the kind of focus that parts a crowd before a word is spoken. You've seen Seth intense. You've seen him motivated. You've seen him perform through pain that would sideline most. But this was different. This was the look of a man done with being a target, done with the wait your turn politeness of locker room diplomacy, done with being the headline for someone else's ambush. If you think you've watched him angry, you've only seen the trailer. Tonight felt like the feature presentation, the feud that wouldn't end. For weeks, the thread running through Raw and SmackDown wasn't just scores and segments. It was the relentless, needling presence of Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed pressing Seth Rollins from every angle, turning post-match moments into statements and backstage interviews into minefields. Seth kept showing up taped but unbowed, delivering the kind of work that earns main event air even when he isn't holding a title. But the equation was lopsided. 2 surging heavyweights, each a force on his own, aligning momentum into a pressure front that followed Seth from bell to bell. The story looked simple on the surface. Underneath, it was the oldest lesson in this business. If you push a professional long enough, you eventually meet the person, not the character. The door, the silence, the stare. There are seconds you can replay in your mind like a clip on loop, and the hush when Seth crossed that threshold will live rent-free in the heads of everyone who saw it. No grand speech, no theatrical prop, just a presence that froze the room. Breakker straightened. Reed squared his shoulders. Onlookers shifted their weight like they'd suddenly remembered how small a hallway can be. Seth didn't make a scene. He made a point. It was the contained energy of a man who's been collecting receipts and has finally decided to check the balance. Not a brawl, a reckoning. What happened next won't be remembered as a backstage free-for-all. It will be remembered as a long overdue correction. Seth didn't lunge as much as he advanced. Controlled, deliberate, eyes locked, vocabulary reduced to movement and intention. Agents and security swarmed quickly. Talent tried to intercede, and cooler heads kept the temperature just below chaos, but the message landed with perfect clarity. Seth wasn't there to trade shots. He was there to redraw boundaries. Where the past few weeks had been about ambushes and advantage, this was about accountability. That rare moment when the locker room feels the line of what's acceptable slide back to where it belongs. The crowd behind the curtain. Backstage crowds are different from arena crowds. They don't chant. They clock details. How someone breathes, whether they blink, if their hands shake or stay still. And that's what made this so unnerving. Seth's composure under the floodlights of fluorescent reality. Breakker, brimming with first-round energy and family legacy. Reed, calibrated power with the confidence of a freight train. Neither man is easily rattled, and yet both recognized a new variable the second Seth arrived. The murmurs weren't about damage. They were about direction. This isn't a spot, it's a shift. What this means for the locker room. Every roster has a temperature, and tonight's needle jumped. For heels, it's a memo about hubris. Momentum isn't immunity. For babyfaces, it's a reminder that grit doesn't require permission. For everyone in between, it's a cautionary tale about narrative debt. When you write checks with weeks of interference and cheap shots, eventually the bill finds you backstage. Leaders step forward after nights like this. Veterans who connect talent and office, agents who build safety valves, partners who anchor high-emotion segments so the product stays compelling without tipping into chaos. The real pros will use this spike to elevate the road ahead rather than scorch it. Breakker and Reed. After the storm. The camera pans tend to stop once the shouting fades, but the story keeps moving. Breakker isn't built to sulk, he recalibrates. That's what thoroughbreds do. He'll look at tonight as data, not defeat. And that mindset is why he's in every short list for future world title conversations. Reed's response will be different. Less talk, more weight shifted forward at bell time, more ruthless economy in the ring. Together, they'll either double down or diverge. But whichever path they choose, one thing is certain. They won't mistake resilience for weakness again, not with Seth Rollins on the other side of the curtain. The suspension era. If you've followed Seth long enough, you know downtime is a myth. Suspension doesn't remove him from the story. It changes where he's writing. Off TV, the work goes inward. Healing, recalibrating, scripting the next gear. On TV, it opens lanes for narrative tension. Promos without face-to-face contact. Allies forced to speak for him. Rivals forced to show who they are without ambushes to hide behind. The clock on an indefinite suspension always starts the second it's announced, because the audience begins counting possibilities. Returns, stings, music hits that bend an arena into a single pitch. That's not fantasy booking. That's physics in this business. What the audience heard tonight, fans didn't get a melee. They got a manifesto. It said that the visionary moniker isn't just branding, it's a worldview. Seth Rollins is not auditioning for your approval. He's asserting his presence in a division that's learned to thrive on noise. And the noise will come. Feeds will explode. Edits will circulate. Hot takes will stack like chairs. But buried under the headlines is a simple truth. Tonight recentered a narrative around consequences. In sports entertainment, that's oxygen. And it's why this angle just jumped a weight class. Why this feels bigger than a feud. Every few years, a storyline escapes its lane and becomes a mirror, reflecting not only character arcs but the culture of the locker room and the patience of the audience. This one has all the markers. An overachiever refusing to be defined by attrition. A pair of dangerous opponents realizing menace is not the same as mastery. And an authority figure daring to be unpopular in the name of order. That triangulation creates gravity. It pulls in side characters, dictates match stakes, and gives premium live event cards a pulse you can feel before the pyro hits. The road from here. So what's next? Expect promos sharpened to a wire, alliances tested in real time, and matches where psychology matters as much as power. If Pierce holds the line, the suspension becomes story architecture. If he buckles to ratings and uproar, the pop on Seth's return becomes the headline that pays it off. Breaker and Reed will need to show evolution, not volume. Different gears, different strategies, something more than hit harder. And Seth? He'll need to return not just furious but focused, turning tonight's statement into sustainable momentum. One moment won't define a year, but it can define how the year is told. Call to the Ring Rumble faithful. If you're riding with us at Ring Rumble, you already know we're here for the full arc, not just the viral clip. Was the suspension justified or short-sighted? Did Seth finally set a boundary or cross one? Tell us what you saw in that split second when the room went quiet, because that's where stories start. Smash the like if you felt the shift, drop your take in the comments so the debate lives past tonight, and hit subscribe if you want the kind of coverage that treats wrestling like the living, breathing theater it is. This isn't over, not by a mile. Suspensions end, rivalries mature, and somewhere, beyond the bright tape lines and camera lanes, a familiar theme will hit, an arena will stand, and a visionary will walk back through a curtain he never truly left.